Hi, it's Irakli from BizNews. I have Giulietta Talevi here from Currency News, and she is covering South Africa's economic capital getting into deeper financial trouble than almost anyone is admitting. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana sent Joburg Mayor Dada Morero a sharp April 23rd letter accusing him of illegally signing 10.3 billion rand wage deal with municipal workers that the city cannot afford. Thank you, Giulietta, for joining us today. Can you explain to us the bigger picture and what this means and why it matters for the city?
Thank you, Irakli, for having me on your show. The bigger picture is that Joburg is in a parlous financial state. And Enoch Godongwana's letter to the mayor was, as you correctly said, about primarily about the wage deal that they've signed. That he says, you cannot afford this, and it's a deal over the next couple of years. And in it, the letter essentially revealed to everyone what we had suspected but not actually known, the financial picture of Johannesburg, which is shocking. So in it, the minister sketched out how the city of Joburg has 3.9 billion rand cash on hand, but it owes 25 billion rand. So I mean, technically, you would say that it's bankrupt now, and cannot afford an excessively expensive wage deal. The reason why it matters is because Johannesburg still accounts for a big chunk of South Africa's GDP. It's a really, really important city. So even though it's been allowed to fall into this state of decay and financial distress, it still matters deeply. It hosts the stock exchange. It is still home to most of the head offices of South African business. So it's really important that it get its financial picture sorted.
And you mentioned how Moody's is now having the city on review for downgrade. I mean, after speaking with experts, what are they saying?
Okay, so the Moody's thing actually was primarily initiated as a result of the city of Johannesburg not filing its audited financial statements within a time period demanded by the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Because its bonds are listed, it has to do that, and you have 6 months in order to file your audited financial statements, and this is for the results to the end of or to the 25th of June 2025. Okay, or end of June 2025. So it still hadn't done that. Um, and so its securities, its bonds, were suspended on the JSE by the exchange. Now, Moody's, which has a quite a generous rating, according to a couple of the people I've spoken to, a couple of the bond analysts, this effectively prompted Moody's to relook at the rating it gives Johannesburg and to put it on review for a possible downgrade. Now they have to produce their statements by the 31st of May. This is absolutely paramount for the city of Joburg to do this. Um, they've kind of brushed it off as a technical matter, and it was a technical matter with the Auditor General, they say. So, but Moody's is actually saying that to us, the failure to produce the financial statements indicates serious deterioration in governance and not just Joburg's financial health. So that is why they have this on review for downgrade. And the bond analysts I've spoken to say that if they don't produce these financial statements by the end of May, a downgrade is pretty much absolutely certain.
And there's a domino risk here, it seems, that if a potential default is on the way, this could mean a much bigger consequence, is it not?
Yeah. So it's not necessarily the case that the downgrade prompts the default. So what the city of Joburg, I mean, it just says to you though that you're a much greater credit risk. So anyone who was thinking of happily lending the city of Joburg money is going to think twice about it. The deeper into junk territory the city's ratings go. Okay, so the two are separate, but Joburg has a bond due on the 22nd of June. It has to pay 1.4 billion rand as part of it's a listed bond. So if it does not pay that, if it doesn't have the money to pay that, then it does go into default. And that, as you say, it's sort of a domino effect. Now, what that can what that can actually happen, what that can prompt rather, is that all of its debts could become due simultaneously. Um, I'm not sure that's going to happen, because 1.4 billion rand in the scheme of things actually isn't massive. Um, and in total, not just the city of Joburg, but Tshwane, Ekurhuleni, eThekwini, and the city of Cape Town, the size of this market is actually kind of small. It's only about 5 billion rand collectively. And so that's tiny in the scheme of debts. Eskom had debts just under half a trillion rand. So just put that in perspective. So, but it's that Joburg has to repay this debt in June. That is the issue, the question of default. That's where it comes up.
And what kind of precedent is this setting? I mean, if Joburg is too big to fail, I mean, where does that leave the taxpayer?
Well, I mean, as you say, so Ian Scott from Chartis Asset Management, who I spoke to, who was the person who actually alerted me to this, and Ian's contention is that actually the ratings agencies, even though they've got Joburg on review now for downgrade, are behind the curve. He says the finances are worse than people think, and they should be trading much deeper into debt, which would also affect the yields that they pay on their bond, right? So Joburg's is like 11.5% or thereabouts, which is not terrible. Um, well, it was before it was suspended. Tshwane, for example, is over 23%, and Tshwane is like deep in junk territory.
Healthcare matters, but what matters most?
Having cover for the people who keep this business going.
Bonitas is there for you when it counts. Bonitas, medical aid for South Africa. Visit bonitas.co.za and find your plan.
I think what you're heading towards is taxpayers have been here before, and there's this risk of paying twice. Could you perhaps speak to that? I mean, we've seen. I mean, both you and I are in Joburg. We've seen, the e-toll saga. I mean, it speaks to a pattern, does it not? Perhaps.
Yes. Sorry, I was going to get onto the point of moral hazard. As you say, it's a taxpayer, a treasury funded put is how Ian Scott put it. So yes, it is, if national government bails out the city of Joburg, what you're effectively saying is that, okay, you can mess up, you can collapse the financial situation of the country's biggest metro, and we'll bail you out because you're too big to fail. So it does create this moral hazard. Um, but you know, yes, it's moral hazard, and yes, it's taxpayers on the hook again. For we're on the hook sort of twice for everything, right? We pay our taxes, but then we have to pay for private services in every other regard of our lives. Um, but I think on balance, the state would probably have to take quite a pragmatic view because it's maybe the lesser of the evils. You don't want a huge cascading debt default. You don't want everyone to call in their loans because then you get a much bigger problem. So, I mean, if I were Treasury looking at this, I would probably say, okay, um, I'll bail you out. But it is also possible, and what they are doing as the stick is the city of Joburg has this conditional grant, or as do all metros. So Treasury can threaten, as they have done, to withhold the conditional grant. Okay, so I mean, they have levers to pull to get the city to act properly. But maybe when your leadership is so sort of incapable of doing the right thing, that maybe that's a foolish assumption.
And it just seems that the incentives are not aligning here. And to your point, Treasury withholding that 8 billion rand that you mentioned in your article, nearly 10% of Joburg's entire annual budget, may not even hold, right? And I just want to go back to your comment around the mechanics of debt and the debt structure. Perhaps we can just elaborate that a bit further for our viewers. The pari passu principle in Latin, meaning equal footing or step by step. What does that mean? And what do we mean by, in Joburg's context, all of the city's debts come back at the same level and everything's called upon?
Because nothing is secured. So there's no sort of secured. There's no collateral here. So and Irakli, this is where I'm not an expert. So please forgive me. I'm not a bond expert, but because it's sort of, I guess, unsecured. Well, credit. This is it just means all I guess creditors are treated equally. So that's the pari passu principle. So if there is a default event or a credit event, it means that everyone should be treated equally. I guess everyone at that point, that's why the risk is that they could all say, well, I want my loans repaid because I have the right to have them repaid because we're all treated equally.
And the May 31st deadline?
So that's when they have to come up with the financial statements. Um, this is the Moody's issue. So this is the Moody's wants to see evidence of the financial statements or the audit for financial statements, and then the June deadline is the bond repayments of 1.4 billion. So those are two sort of critical dates.
So if Joburg misses that, the May 31st deadline, then a downgrade is virtually certain, and then the domino effect follows.
Yeah. So Casey Sprague, who's a market strategist at Anchor Capital, sent me some really interesting thoughts about this. I believe ABSA is also now kind of looking at what constitutes a default. Is it a downgrade? Is a downgrade what constitutes a default? And because they're also trying to get their heads around this. But yeah, Casey was pretty much of the view that a downgrade was for certain, if they didn't come up with the statements.
And when we look at the precedent, we see, the debt crisis that Joburg's been through before, specifically on eToll, and we ended up as taxpayers paying twice. And it almost seems like there is a pattern there. So it's very interesting how we're landing in the same spot. But thank
In
you.
a way, although yeah, yeah. Although as Casey mentions, there's no precedence for a default of a bond default in recent times. So if that were to happen, it would be if we're in kind of uncharted territory in terms of the Municipal Financial Management Act.
Thank you so much. This is Irakli from BizNews. Thank you, Giulietta Talevi, for being with us. And please do check out the article on biznews.com. Thank you.
Thanks, Irakli.